C64K Retro Gaming Goodness.
Hey, Bastich B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastich B.
Welcome back. So this is actually a remake of my first ever Top 10 I ever did for the Commodore 64, my favorite 10 racing games. And the hosting was pretty cringy, I couldn't stand it. Anyway, this video has been completely remade, all the reviews have been redone. The top 10 has been expanded down to a top 20, so I've actually got to include all the games I wanted to, all the C64 ones I really wanted on this list, so it's a much better representation of this genre. And just like all my other top 10s for the C64, this is restricted to the classic C64 era from 1982 to 1993. Now let's not waste any more time and get the countdown started.
Number 20.
Super Monaco GP was released on the C64 by US Gold in 1991. It was based on Sega's 1989 racing game of the same name. This is a pretty loose interpretation of the arcade, with the Formula 1 action taking on a fast-paced arcade style that takes place over 4 tracks, unlike the original arcade game which only had the one Monaco track. It's extremely fast, and between dodging your opponents and those sharp turns you're gonna have your arcade skills put to the test. It featured multiple transmission setups, which increased the difficulty but also the speed, so be warned. This is a fun, loose adaptation of an arcade game with good graphics and excellent music, courtesy of Jerome Tell, who never fails in that department. Zap64 in issue number 71 gave the game a whopping 90% overall, which honestly is a bit overrated in retrospect. But if you're into these quick-paced style, less simulation style Formula 1 games, then Super Monaco GP is worth a race.
Number 19.
Turbo Outrun was released on the C64 by US Gold in 1989, the same year as the arcade release. The game was programmed by their talented team of Probe, who made some truly brilliant C64 games in its later years, like Special Criminal Investigations, Mr. Heli, and Smash TV. This game is how you do an arcade conversion correct. Not only does it feature all the arcade's new modes, plus all 16 stages, but it even enhances some aspects, like the soundtrack, for example, by Jerome Tell, which is absolutely phenomenal. And that remix of Magical Sound Shower on the loader screen is one of the C64's best SID tunes, hands down. Besides the soundtrack, the graphics are excellent in terms of menus, intermission screens, and the game itself. It simply pushes the C64 to the limit. There's just such a large variety of track with all the arcade details intact, including the storms and roadside obstacles. Zap64 December 1989 issue sang its praises, giving the game an overall 97%, saying, "Perfectly presented with all the superb playability of the coin-op." Besides the C64 version, most other ports fared fairly badly, so do be aware of that if you plan on trying it on other systems.
Number 18.
Pocket Rockets was released in 1989 by Capcom USA. It's a mixture of two styles of games, motorbike drag racing and more traditional against the clock style racing action. This for me is a very under the radar racer on the C64, which I never hear anyone ever mention. The drag racing segments is all about quick timing and gearing, and is actually quite fun to master. The racing segments, which also include a full championship mode, play really well, despite the fact that it looks like a blatant clone of Epyx's Super Cycle. I mean, if you're gonna clone something, you might as well steal from the best. The game has nice detailed graphics and has a lot of variety in the bikes and options. It's a really good hidden gem racer on the old breadbox.
Number 17.
The Great American Cross Country Road Race was released by Activision in 1985 and is seen as an update of their game Enduro on the Atari 2600. The game is a race across the US from the west to the east coast, cannonball run style. Plan your route, hit the speed, it's all about making it within the time limit, beating opponents, outrunning the cops, fueling up, and dealing with all types of weather conditions. This game throws everything at you. You cannot simply gun it either and hope to win. The gearing system and needing to slow down for certain situations like gas stations or avoiding speed traps make it a bit more than a mindless pedal to the metal game. Once you get used to the gearing system, which is a bit tricky at first, it turns out to be a very cool game, much in the mold of Sega's arcade game Turbo from 1981. I played this at a friend's house a lot. We used to take turns to see who could get the furthest across the map. It's another unique game from Activision's golden age of software development.
Number 16.
Indie Heat was released in 1991 and published by Storm, and was a conversion of Leland Corporation's arcade game that was released the same year. We played this a lot back in the day, especially in the 2-player mode. It was a total riot. It's another single-screen styled racer and similar in style to Leland Corporation's own Super Off-Road, but this time you're racing in Indy cars over the course of 12 tracks. It was fast-paced and frantic as you smashed your opponents and tried to complete laps as quickly as possible, all the while paying attention to your fuel status and damage so you knew when to hit the pits when needed. You could also upgrade your car between races to give yourself a fighting chance for the next track. The graphics did a real good job of capturing the look of the arcade, and the controls were twitchy, but once you were used to it you could zip around the track very slickly. Zap64 in issue number 83 gave it 91% overall, and it's another great late C64 release, worth giving a go, especially if you have a friend in tow.
Number 15.
Street Rod was released by California Dreams in 1989. This is a pretty unique racer, putting you in the shoes of a kid in circa 1950-60s era of hot rod style street racing. You get to buy your car in the beginning with a limited amount of funds and start modding it, which is the meat of the game. All manner of modifications can be made before you head it on out to the local diner to meet up for other street races or drag races, where you can bet money or pink slips. The more wins means more upgrades and access to 25 different cars to indulge in. The racing aspect is not on the level of Test Drive, but still does a good job, with the drag races being very short but all about speed, and the street races being longer and way more intense. The game does a fantastic job of putting you in that atmospheric 1950s style, setting and vibe, with nice colourful graphics, and even though the racing is a little bit slower, the focus here is definitely on the modding side of the table. So in that respect, it's quite a different style racer than the C64 is used to. It's a fun game to get lost in, but just be careful with those pink slips. It's really high stakes gaming.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Number 14.
Hot Rod was released by Activision in 1990. It was based on an obscure 1988 Sega arcade game of the same name. This is a top-down hot rod racing game that plays similar in style to the then future releases of the Micro Machines games. The game comprises of 15 tracks, with 3 of you in each race, as you need to keep up with the leader or be the leader. If you lag behind, you get pushed forward, with a penalty to you losing valuable fuel. You can pick up extra gas along the way and even use shortcuts if you know the track pretty well. After each race, you can upgrade your car before moving on. The game was put together by the team of Ashley Routledge and Dean Saunders, who both coded and did the graphics on this one. Music is provided by Jerome Tell and is an absolute gem of a title tune. Overall, it's fun, if a bit of an obscure C64 racer with a good 2-player mode as well. Zap scored it a respectable 70%, saying a well-produced Super Sprint variant, and we'll be seeing another great racer from Ash and Dean later on in this countdown.
Number 13.
Test Drive 2 The Duel is the sequel to the original released in 1987. This 1989 sequel was also released by Accolade with programming duties by Distinctive Software. If you're unfamiliar with this series, these are car driving simulators. With this one, The Duel, like the name implies, is about illegal street racing from point to point. Choose a fancy sports car, head out on the road and try to beat the computer to the next gas station. You have to dodge traffic and watch out for the cops who will come after you if you exceed the speed limit. It's so much fun. It's the racer I'm guessing that they always wanted the first one to be, using an enhanced gaming engine, which Accolade also used to great effect in Grand Prix circuit, and another pumping Chris Hadley Sid tune, excellent graphics and presentation, and the ability to expand the game with multiple car and scenery expansion packs adding European locales and muscle cars, plus a whole lot more, which ended up making this, in my opinion, one of the ultimate car simulators on the Commodore 64.
Number 12.
The Cycles was released by Accolade in 1991. It was a motorbike Grand Prix racing game from Distinctive Software using their own Grand Prix circuit engine for the game. It packs in a lot of content with 15 world tracks, single races, and a full championship mode. Once you get used to the handling of the bike, which should only take one practice lap, you'll feel right at home in this first-person bike view, which is very impressive graphically. Making use of your map in the top left corner is vital to learning the tracks and knowing when those big turns are coming up. The game races after selecting your bike are challenging, as are the opponents. There are also multiple difficulty settings, which is always a good addition. The Cycles delivers on all fronts, excellent presentation, an absolutely rocking Sid track intro, and good gameplay once you get used to the feel of the bike. Another racing gem from Distinctive Software.
Number 11.
Power Drift was released in 1989 by Activision and was a conversion of Sega's 1988 racing powerhouse arcade by legendary designer Yu Suzuki, creator of almost all of Sega's most iconic 80s arcades. The graphics and programming for the C64 version was taken up by Chris Butler, who had already proved his knack for bringing brilliant conversions to the C64. He had just done Sega's Thunderblade and Space Harrier, so why not Power Drift? The game is a fast-paced racer set on these insane roller coaster style tracks with 25 to race in all. You're in a small little buggy, which is often why the game is referred to as the original kart racing game. Choose one of the 12 characters, jump in a buggy, and let the insanity start. It's really fast and doesn't let up for a second. The graphics are what you wish the C64 conversion of Outrun could have been, and the tunes by Dave Lowe are good, but no Hiroshi Kawaguchi level by any means. For an 8-bit conversion, it manages to keep all the thrills of the arcade, even the crazy hills and dips, and is a really fun game to slap on for a few rounds. It's just another brilliant arcade conversion by Butler.
Number 10.
4x4 Off-Road Racing was released by Epix in 1988. There's not many racing games like this on the C64, so it's pretty unique in that respect. It's a 4x4 off-road racer that mixes arcade action and some simulation aspects. Choose your truck and kit it out with different tires and equipment and spare parts that you may need if you break down during the race. You choose between 4 different US-based off-road courses and head on out. The tracks are littered with obstacles that need to be avoided to keep your truck in tip-top condition. Repairs are available if you bought spares, and you have to keep tabs on your fuel, as if you run out, it's game over. I'd advise definitely taking extra fuel and buying a winch in the beginning, because you're definitely going to need them. There is a large dose of strategy needed here, from what to buy and how heavy your truck is, which in turn affects fuel consumption, and many other factors. The game has the usual Epix high production values, visually, although sound effects are just average at best. Zap64 trashed this game as usual with just 56% in issue number 43, which honestly is just par for the course for their reviews. Don't let that dissuade you though from a really unique racing experience on the C64.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Are you?
Yeah.
You like video games? No.
Outrun Europa was released in 1991 by US Gold, with Probe doing the development. It's a loose spin-off of Sega's Outrun series set in Europe as you're trying to outrun the cops. The game's best feature is its multiple vehicles you get to drive, from motorbikes, sports cars, and jet skis, as you attempt to get to the end of a stage before your time runs out or the cops get you. This is an extremely fun and well-made racer, where Probe actually improved on their great Turbo Outrun C64 conversion and make this even better. The graphics are nice and varied, and everything moves at a really fast pace, with another set of excellent tunes by Jerome Tell. Zap in issue number 77 gave it 94% overall, and it's definitely, in my opinion, one of the best arcade style races on the old bread box.
Number 8.
Pit Stop 2 was released by Epyx in 1984 and was a sequel to the original Pit Stop game. This one, however, ups the ante on everything, making it one of the most fun Formula 1 games on the C64, with 6 international tracks to race on, and a built-in split screen for 1 or 2 player action, and was one of the first times I'd ever seen this in a video game. Most people, however, played this in 2-player mode with friends, battling it out to see who would cross the finish line first, without blowing out their tires or running out of gas, which adds a bit of strategy to the arcade action by knowing when to hit the pits and overhaul your vehicle without losing too much time. It's a great yet simple racing game that improves on the original tenfold, and is a really enjoyable game whether you play it in single player or experience the 2-player action. Super Off-Road was released by Virgin Games in 1990 and programmed by those geniuses at Graft Gold, who also did the great Rainbow Island C64 conversion as well. It's an amazing port of an excellent arcade that makes monster truck racing from this 3 1/4 view so much fun. Race small, quick tracks, make money, upgrade your truck, repeat. The fast-paced gameplay and great graphics do a fantastic job of imitating the arcade, and more importantly, getting the feel of the trucks just right, even without the steering wheel controller, which is quite a feat. As a big fan of the original arcade, I think they couldn't have done a better job, and a great entry for arcade racing games.
Number 6.
Super Cycle, a motorbike racing game that makes the C64's version of Super Hang-On look like it was programmed on an Atari 2600. This was an amazing racing game. Here's my original copy I got in 1986, and I treasured it as a kid. It's a straightforward point-to-point racer against opponents and the clock, taking place on real roads across the US. You can pimp yourself out and your bike and then get racing. The speed in this game is absolutely amazing, and the controls are tight and precise, with some lush graphics, excellent animation and details that Epyx was known for. The title music is also very catchy, and it always gets in my head. This is still the best motorbike racing game on the C64 in my opinion, and Zap 64 magazine gave it a massive 95% overall.
Number 5.
Grand Prix Circuit was released in 1988 by Accolade and was designed by DSR, makers of the Test Drive series. It's by far the most impressive looking and playing Grand Prix game on the C64, with excellent graphics and a really fast frame rate that outpaces both Test Drive 1 and 2. It's typical Accolade in style, a simulator and arcade style racing game mashed together, with really slick presentation and a rocking Chris Hatley Sid track, who did all DSR's best music tracks for their games. The setup allows you to play quick arcade style races or go full championship mode, which has 8 tracks from famous courses from all over the world. It's another perfect combination from Accolade, whose 80 C64 output was staggering. A must-play racer.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Test Drive was released by Accolade in 1987 on the C64. It was made by Distinctive Software, and they produced other Accolade racing games like The Cycles and Grand Prix Circuit. Test Drive was simple. You drive along a dangerous mountain road as fast as possible, while outrunning the police and avoiding crashes into oncoming traffic. You got to choose from one of 5 slick cars at the beginning, from a Lamborghini to a Porsche 911 Turbo, and head it on out, and simply make it to a gas station to start the next leg of the journey, which there are 5 of. We played this game endlessly back in the day, over-revving the car and blowing it up multiple times. The excellent presentation and music got you into the mood. It also had a really great sense of speed once you got the car up to a decent speed, that is. The game is much more limited than the sequel, Test Drive 2 The Duel, which has a lot more variety going on. But this game runs a bit faster because of the simplicity of the road track, and that's why it's just a little bit more fun to play overall, even though I think the sequel is a much better game. It was a big hit upon release and sold over 500,000 copies by 1989. Zap64's review in issue number 35 is laughably bad, as they only gave this game 46% overall. I mean, seriously, what did they actually play? The C64 version of Whack Le Mans? I don't know, but it's safe to say that Test Drive is a must-play C64 racer and another classic game from Accolade.
Number 3.
Slicks was released by Codemasters in 1992, right near the end of the C64's original life cycle. It's an overhead Formula 1 Grand Prix racer featuring 6 tracks from around the world, qualifying laps, spectacular car crashes, and even a robust 2-player mode, and all of this on a budget release. The game was put together by the programming duo of Ash and Dave, who we saw earlier deliver the underrated Hot Rod arcade conversion. You can challenge other drivers, and if you win the race ahead of them, you get to keep their car, which adds an unusual driving dynamic to the game. The cars run real fast, but the controls are pitch perfect, giving you real control over the tight turns if you know how to manage your speed. And I love the fact that it's one crash, and that ends your round. It sets the stakes real high for each race. The 2-player mode plays like Codemasters' later Micro Machines games and also features a cool tune by Alistair Brimble of the Amiga game Body Blows Galactic fame. All the magazines sang its praises at the time, with Zap64 giving it an overall 82% in their October 92 issue.
Number 2.
And here we got 1987's Buggy Boy converted by Elite based on the 1985 Tatsumi arcade racing game. And this is pure arcade racing bliss at its best. Race your buggy on the 4 different off-road tracks against the clock. The graphics are much smaller than the arcade but are well animated and extremely colorful. And the game moves at a cracking pace considering all the obstacles that are thrown at you. And that's the charm of this game. Trying to avoid so much death while still keeping on track makes it just so much fun. As far as all the arcade racing games I've replayed for this video, this still holds up the best in terms of gameplay, which is easy to control but hard to master, but most importantly, it's just damn fun to play. And let's stop this countdown just for a second, yeah? You're probably asking yourself, what happened to Turbocharge? Where's Racing Destruction Set, Spy Hunter, Badlands, all these awesome racing games? For me personally, I feel these are too different from regular racing games. I call those racing destruction games. Games involving some sort of demolition aspect or shooting action. So I've actually made a separate C64 top 10 for that already, the Racing Destruction top 10. So please check that one out. I just find it hard to compare Pit Stop to Spy Hunter. I know a lot of other people just lump them into the same thing. For me, they just feel too much, they feel too different gameplay wise to be included as just simple racing games. So please check that one out for all those other awesome games. And now, on to my number 1 classic racing game.
And number 1 is
Stunt Car Racer, which was released in 1989 by Microplay, which was a division of Microprose. I played this game a lot back in '89, and it was a game that I always put on to wow my friends as they marveled at the 3D graphics. Although Stunt Car is a racing game, it boasts a lot of unique features that made it rise above the rest of them. With a total of 8 tracks, it was a real challenge to see them all as you battled through the leagues, gaining points and moving on up. It was hard but very rewarding. The attention to detail was a real cut above the rest, with excellent detailed graphics and a real clever fake 3D graphic style that seemed to take vector graphics and colorize them while still keeping the game running at a fast speed. It was brilliant. The tracks themselves were unique as well, as it felt like you were driving on a roller coaster with no barriers. If you flew off, your car took damage and you'll be hoisted back onto the track, losing valuable time. You did have access to a turbo boost, which was limited for each race, but was necessary to jump over those massive gaps in the tracks. The game played really well, and learning to get your speed just right for the jumps and using the excellent suspension system of the car to take the corners properly was enormously satisfying. The strange thing was that this game was released the same year as the Atari Arcade Classic Hard Driving came out, and the similarities between the two games are many. By playing this in retrospect, I find it's aged really well, and I actually enjoy it even more than that Atari Classic. Seek this hidden gem out, you won't regret it. And that's it, another top 10. I hope you enjoyed this complete remake and expanded version of the original. I feel it's a much better video now. Thank you for joining me, Bastich B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. And if you can please like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.